This is Hammett.
And Jessica.
And you're listening to the Friendly Atheist Podcast. Go to patreon.com/Friendly Atheist Podcast, whether or not you like the show, and become a subscriber. Thank you for your support.
Did you say whether or not you like the show?
I don't care anymore. We're surviving a polar vortex, and we are both just saying we've been cooped up inside for like 2 days.
Going nuts.
This is my first time out of the house in 2 days, pretty much.
Yeah, if there's a lot of background noise, it's because Dottie has been outside for a grand total of 4 minutes in the last 48 hours.
Nice.
It's just too goddamn cold.
It really is. I walked outside to get here, and it was 0 degrees, and it felt lovely.
Oh, my God. It's that wind, though. That's what all Midwesterners say, and it's true. My kitchen pipes are frozen. Nothing's burst, but I foolishly forgot to run the water overnight. What an idiot I am. Anyway, I've been cooped up for like 3 days. You're the only human I've seen who's not Mikey or Dottie.
Good, let me depress you some more. All right, there's so many things. Let's talk about Sarah Huckabee Sanders, because she did an interview yesterday on the Christian Broadcasting Network. This is Pat Robertson's channel. And she was with CBN's David Brody and Jennifer Wishon. And basically, here's the soundbite that I think was interesting. The question, and you know they're going to throw her softballs, was basically, does it kind of blow your mind that someone like Donald Trump is sitting in the Oval Office? And the correct answer is yes, but for very different reasons. But here's her answer. I think God calls all of us to fill different roles at different times, and I think that he wanted Donald Trump to become president, et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, here's the thing. Like, is that the dumbest thing I've heard all day? Maybe. But like it's also par for the course for Christian rhetoric. Like it is a handy rhetorical device when something unexpected happens and God wanted XYZ to happen.
Which is why Robert Mueller isn't investigating Trump. He's really just trying to get in the way of God.
Right. But because God wanted Trump to be president, but not Mueller to investigate him.
Right,
or
of course. So
Obama
anyone
to be
who
president,
here's a question I had about, again, I know it's CBN News.
Right.
It's not exactly where I go to
Big
for
journalism. Around news.
Right. I think the logical pushback from any reporter would have been, if God put Trump in the White House, did God also put Obama in the White House? And should we be criticizing him as well? Guess what he asked next?
What?
Not that.
Oh, I can't believe it.
I know.
I mean, it's a nothing burger question. Like, when you say, it's a conversation ender. I think God wanted this. All right, well, cool. All right. There's literally nothing to be said about that. It is a garbage phrase. It's the thoughts and prayers of an interview answer.
Think about what that means. That means God apparently approves of tearing refugee babies away from their parents. It means God doesn't care about environmental disasters and ignoring climate change. He's fine with stoking racial bigotry. He's fine with just keeping paychecks from workers out of selfishness and spite and racism. And, the guy who had multiple affairs with his third wife, with whom he had his fifth kid, totally fine, too. That's what it means when she's saying God is cool with him being in the White House. God wanted this.
Yeah, I mean, it's a dumb thing to say. It's not surprised. Like, are you surprised that she said that?
I'm not surprised she said it. I'm not surprised the Christian Broadcasting Network asked about it. But it's still one of those things that when you put them together and she says it out loud, we should all be able to look at that and not just ignore it like, what else did you expect? But a holy shit, these people are insane sort of question.
Yeah.
Because at the very least, if you think God wanted Trump to be there, let's follow that up and talk about what God wants when a Democrat is in the White House and how Christians react to that, because that is that's the core of that issue. If it's not just rhetoric, let's keep following through on it and see where this rabbit hole leads. And of course, they're not going to do that. But I would argue, if you think God put Donald Trump in the White House, that may be the strongest case for atheism that I've heard in a really long time.
Yeah, I mean, of course. They're going to say that about anything they like. And anything they don't like, it's because so-and-so turned their back on God, or God was angry, or the gays were doing something somewhere else, so he threw a hurricane at Puerto Rico. I don't know. It's empty. It's fucking empty, and I don't think even they believe it.
Do you think the white evangelicals who take Sarah Huckabee Sanders seriously. Do you think they hear that and say, yes, she's totally fine with all this?
Yes, because I think
or
if you
she's right that God wanted this.
Yeah, I think if you have talked yourself into believing that that Trump in any way represents Christianity the way like most Christians think it should be taught, not in this sort of like xenophobic, racist, homophobic thing that the evangelical right has sort of birthed. If you genuinely look at Trump and say like, oh yeah, that's a good Christian leader, then yeah, you're gonna fucking believe Sarah Huckabee Sanders when it's fucking
This is
stupid.
what I don't get about their argument, because I think a lot of right-wing pastors have said, Tony Perkins, the hate group leader, has said this multiple times. He said something like, I didn't elect a pastor. I know Trump is a flawed person, but he's a means to an end.
Oh.
I like the goals. I like the judges. I don't love him, but whatever. That to me makes a lot more sense.
For sure, but he seems to be an anomaly. It seems that Trump's base genuinely believes he's the real deal. And so, like, yeah, of course they're going to think that. Of course they're going to use this rhetoric.
I would actually prefer if more of these like conservative evangelical Christians just said, look, Trump is insane, but he gives us what we want, and that's it. The power matters to us. But the idea that Huckabee Sanders is going at, because she has to, which is to say, no, he's wonderful too. God loves him. God wants him to be there. That's where I'm like, even your base who is dumb enough to vote for you, even they should be like, no, like God doesn't like this guy. He's just like an opportunity. So let's use him because he's dumb enough to be used.
I mean, I don't think people who believe that kind of thing are necessarily that politically savvy. I know we talk about like,
judges and all that.
Yeah, people like Trump, politicians like Trump. The GOP supports Trump because he puts politicians on the bench. Do you think like...
Yeah, judges on the bench, right.
Thank you, judges on the bench. Like, I barely know how any of that shit works, and I read this every single day, day in and day out. If somebody who does not pay this much attention to the news, they are not going to be like, oh, well, he's really stacking the Third Circuit. Like, that's not fair. Part of most people's understanding of what a president does. The reality is that Trump is allowing them to say the quiet parts out loud. Yeah. They're allowing them to be more forthright with their racism, and they fucking love it. They hate that that the world is changing around them, and every politician is no longer somebody who looks just like them and acts just like them. It's very scary for them. And so yeah, Trump is fine because he says the racist shit they all say around the kitchen table, and cool, it's okay for me to do this again.
Right. Let me move to a disturbing story in a different realm. So the Supreme Court is changed now. It's 5-4 conservative leaning, more conservative leaning, I should say. Kennedy was no liberal.
You're right.
But the biggest church-state separation case...
We've lost our swing vote more than...
We've lost our swing vote, right? Swing vote. The biggest church-state separation case that's coming in their direction, at least in terms of atheism and activism and the stuff we talk about, is it regards this giant cross. And I want to talk about this because this is they've now scheduled this case.
God, I feel like a giant cross is such a fucking petty thing to be talking about right now.
I'll tell you why it's a bigger deal in a second. Okay. But here's the story. There is in Maryland, in Prince George's County, Maryland, in the city of Bladensburg, there is this busy intersection that a lot of cars drive around. And right in the middle of this like busy intersection, it almost looks like a roundabout, but I can't tell for sure. But in the middle of it, there's this 40-foot giant cross. And officially, it's like a war memorial for World War I.
Oh, yeah.
But it's a cross.
Right.
And like the thing about this particular memorial is anyone driving around it would think, oh, yeah, that's a big Jesus thing, because there's no sign that says it's a World War I memorial.
Right.
There are people whose veterans who died, whose names are like etched in a plaque, is hidden below that cross. Like if you go up right close to it, and they're like, we had no idea his name was on it because we thought it was a giant Christian symbol. Like it's so clearly a giant Christian symbol. And the city is basically maintaining it. They're using taxpayer funds to support it.
Is it on city property?
It is absolutely on city property. And so the American Humanist Association filed a lawsuit in 2014. Long story short, it made its way up to the Supreme Court. The oral arguments about whether this particular cross is legal, is constitutional, that is going to be on February 27th. They've now assigned a date to it. This week, the American Humanist Association basically submitted their arguments. They basically said, when we come in for oral arguments, you should know this is what we're going to be saying. This is why we think this thing is unconstitutional. So we're giving that to you. And since we go second, basically, to the government, we read what the government has to say as to why they're defending it, and here's our response to it. So we now know what the American Humanist Association is going to say. Yesterday, we're taping this on Thursday, the 31st. On the 30th, all the supporting briefs were due for the American Humanist Association side. So in addition to their arguments, you have a whole bunch of other people chiming and saying, we're not part of the lawsuit, but we support the American Humanist Association for different reasons, and we all have our specific reasons we're getting involved in this, but we want you to know why we think this should be unconstitutional as well. What I wanted to do, because I think this is important, is talk about what the AHA is arguing in terms of why this thing ought to be unconstitutional. Because only one of them, I think, is very obvious to people who don't pay attention to this stuff on a regular basis. So the first reason they give is the Bladensburg Cross is a violation of the Establishment Clause. This is government promotion of religion, and it's not just like religion over non-religion, which the Supreme Court and other courts have sometimes said is okay,
nebulous.
like with invocations. They're like, yeah, if you want to promote religion, it's cool. But this is specifically a particular religion over other ones. And they're like, the court has never said that's okay.
Right.
So this is a violation of the Establishment Clause, and it's not some ambiguity here. This is pretty clear cut. Okay, number 2. The cross effectively denigrates the contributions of non-Christian veterans. Because again, if you go to, what's the big memorial, the war memorial?
The Vietnam
Memorial, I believe. Yeah. They have all the gravestones.
with the black granite?
Yeah. They have.
Oh, no. Are you thinking of
Arlington National Cemetery?
National
That is
Cemetery?
what I'm thinking of.
Okay.
They have all the tombstones, but they also have your religious symbol etched onto the tombstones. And the thing is, there's like 70 to 80 you can choose from.
Really?
Yeah. And including like atheists. There is an atheist symbol, including...
Is it an A? Like the atheist A?
I think it's like the American atheist, like it looks like a nuclear symbol sort of A.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so they have that as an option, and some people have it. There are some pagan ones, some Wiccan ones, whatever. Like there's all sorts of them. And they're saying, look, if this is a war memorial, it is a Christian war memorial, and plenty of non-Christians died in this war. You can say it represents all veterans, but you are not using...
But it obviously does not.
It doesn't. You're not using some generic symbol of sacrifice. You're using the Christian symbol, and everyone knows it. Okay, that's number 2. Number 3, they said, a victory for the cross. If you say this thing is legal, that's actually bad news for Christians. Because the only way you could say this is legal is to say, no, this is not some symbol of Christianity. This is a general... It means you sacrificed your life. That's what the cross means. And I would assume a bunch of Christians who see the cross and they think this is what Jesus died on to save me and to rescue me from my sin. He died for my sins. The government would basically be saying, when you look at that cross, don't think of Jesus. Think of sacrifice.
Do you think people are really going to think that? Do you think Christians are really going to be up in arms about that?
I think... They're saying if the government wants to use that argument, one that they could then use in other cases, saying, well, it's just a cross. It's not anything important. It's not a Christian symbol. It's just a cross. That downplays how seriously we ought to take that symbol. I don't know that it's the biggest thing they're going to fight about here, but it's just worth pointing out that the AHA is saying this would be a Pyrrhic victory for Christians if you win this one because you don't want to win this case.
But they do that already. Like, we've heard time and time again people say, oh, it's not a Christian symbol. It's a symbol of love or whatever. Like, they do that shit all the time anyway. It just,
Maybe.
I understand what you mean, but I do not think that anybody's going to think of it that way.
Okay, number 4.
Oh.
No, there's more.
It's the rule of threes, Hammett, not
I'm
the
sorry.
rule of four.
The fact that the cross has been up for decades, which it has, doesn't mean it's okay. And in fact, the Supreme Court has said this about Establishment Clause cases. The famous one is taking mandatory Bible readings and prayers out of public schools. Well, that had happened for decades prior to that, but they said, yeah, but it's still wrong,
right.
So we have to stop doing that. And the AHA is saying, yeah, this cross has been up forever, but it doesn't matter. Don't let tradition and history, which is an argument the other side is using, like, oh, this was up for decades and y'all didn't complain about it then.
Right.
Why does it matter now? It's fine. And they're saying, no, that is not a good excuse. It's still illegal. Number 5, they're saying it's not just some passive display, which is another argument the other side has made. They said, look, it's just a cross, a war memorial cross. It's not like a dude standing on the corner saying convert or die. It's not an active symbol of proselytizing. It's just sitting there. It's not forcing you to do anything. So what's the big deal? And the American Humanist Association...
Stupid argument.
Which one?
The one that, like, them saying, oh, it's not literally hitting you over the head, so what are you complaining about?
Right. And the AHA says that's irrelevant. It's still a giant cross in a busy intersection. And if it was, I'm saying this, if it was like a Muslim symbol, Christians would be up in arms over it. They would not say, well, it's just sitting there. I guess I'll shut up.
Yeah.
Like, no.
That's very dumb.
And by the way,
okay,
the AHA adds, it's not just passive because the town of Bladensburg has actually held events that included Christian prayers at the cross.
Huh.
They used it as a symbol of Christianity. It's not random.
Oh, my God.
Number 6, we're almost done, but there's more. Number 6, one of the arguments made from the other side is if you say this is illegal, all of these war memorials are going to come down, and like, how disrespectful is that to the troops? And they're basically saying, no, the Supreme Court could easily say this cross is illegal and it would not affect all these other war memorials, in part because a lot of the other memorials
aren't just crosses.
They are not just crosses. They include other symbols. They are part of memorials that include other symbols. This is a one-off giant Christian display. There are only literally a couple of them like it. So if you say this one's illegal, maybe a couple of them would have to be moved or taken down or moved to private property. But seriously, this is not some domino effect that's going to tear down every memorial.
But even were that true, like, good. The point should always stand. Like, if you are trying to honor veterans, then honor all veterans,
right?
And don't just honor Christian ones and pretend
pretend
dumb.
You're doing it for everybody. Yeah, Jews are cool with this symbol.
Yeah,
like, no, they're
great.
not. Okay, number 7, and this is a bigger deal. There is a way that the Supreme Court for decades now has decided any case involving religious displays and whether they're legal or not. And it's called the Lemon Test. And it has because the dude was named Lemon. So here's the Lemon Test. There are 3 parts to it. They ask themselves...
Can we call it the Lemon Party Test?
No. They ask themselves 3 questions. Is the law or the display or whatever, or whatever statute like a local government used to put it up, was it secular in nature?
Okay.
And in this case, you could argue, fine, if they say it's a war memorial, that's secular in nature. Number 2, does it advance or inhibit religion? And in this case, the AHA is saying, this one advances Christianity. Number 3, does it create excessive entanglement between church and state? In this case, because you have the city maintaining this giant cross. They're holding events at it.
Right.
Like, so if you say yes to any of those questions, that it does break the rule in any of these ways, then it's illegal. The only way you can allow a religious symbol to stay up is if it was the intention was not to advance a particular religion. Then you can get away with it, according to the courts. And they're saying, look, this fails the Lemon Test for 2 separate reasons.
Right.
So if you say this cross is legal, you're basically saying, let's ignore the Lemon Test.
Right.
And by doing that, you would be throwing away something that has worked really well for like 50 years. That's a dumb idea for the court because everyone's gotten used to this, like, it's an objective test. It's one everyone knows how to use, and we can answer those questions about it. It's not broken, so don't get rid of it. That's another one. And then the final argument the AHA is using is saying, we're not trying to destroy this monument. you can easily take this Christian cross and move it to private property nearby. People have done that before.
Right.
It's not a big deal. And it's fine. Another option that is on the table is you get rid of the arms and you create like an obelisk, just a straight up pole, and call that a war memorial. You can do that, but the AHA is saying, we have other options here. We're not trying to destroy your monument. Just move it somewhere where it's off city property.
Or add like some goalposts and make it like a pitchfork.
Like that Jesus statue in Ohio somewhere. Yeah.
There's lots of options.
So those are the arguments that the AHA is telling the Supreme Court.
I just imagine somebody up there just sign off the arms of the cross.
That's what the religious right thinks the AHA wants to do.
That's what I want to do now.
This is what they're telling, basically, to the 5 conservative justices and, like, honestly, John Roberts. This is what they're saying. Look, for all these reasons, this thing is unconstitutional.
Right.
We're giving you so many outs here
right.
without you alienating, like, the conservative base.
Right.
We're giving you so many ways to say this is illegal without getting rid of other war memorials, without saying, you know, it's a slap in the face to Jews, which it is. But pick any of them. Yeah. John Roberts, you've done this before. It's sad that he's the swing judge, but that's basically what they're doing here. And I would note yesterday, all these additional, like 7 or 8 separate amicus briefs came in saying we support what the AHA is doing, but we have other reasons for saying this is unconstitutional. There were 2 that were interesting there. One of them said, we want you to judge this case on its merits because there are legit church-state issues we need to discuss here. What we don't want to do, and what we saw the other side wants you to do, because we read their briefs, is they want you to dismiss the case saying the people who sued in the first place don't have legal standing to bring about this case.
I see.
Because they just drive past the thing. They live in the city. They drive past it, and they're saying, look, I'm not Christian. This thing offends me. I'm bothered by it for the following reasons. Right. And they're saying, the other side says, who cares? Yeah. That's not a good enough reason to make this big decision off of that. But this group, and I forgot which one this was in particular, they said, do not dismiss this case on standing, because if you do, there would be no possible way for anyone to ever bring forth a lawsuit involving something like this cross or a 10 Commandments monument that's on government property or any religious symbol in a public place, because on what grounds could anyone bring a lawsuit? The only way you could do it is to say, I live here, I am a citizen here, and this is troubling, and as a non-Christian, I have a basis on which to sue. And they're saying I'm quoting here, there would be no standing in any religious display case, however egregious its facts.
Do you believe that? That if this was dismissed, nobody would ever have an option? Because
the question is, how would you bring it forth? Like, on what grounds could you say this 10 Commandments monument that's sitting outside my city hall or the courthouse is wrong? How do you argue that one?
To me, that feels different. And I've been trying to articulate exactly why. I think the 10 Commandments monument, and I'm not saying that one's better, one's worse. To me, they seem a little bit disconnected because
the 10 Commandments is like more serious?
More serious and more on the nose. The fact that it's in front of, say, Austin City Hall or whatever the state Capitol building.
Capitol in Texas, right? But that one was declared legal.
Right.
Because of other monuments around it.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But say one is standing there alone in front. Right. To me, that is a very clear symbol of the people inside this building obey these laws. These are not laws I signed up for. Therefore, I don't think my mayor or my city council has my best interest in mind.
Right.
To me, the cross...
So what if there was a cross in... I'm making this up because I can't think of a case where this has happened, but let's say they put up a large cross in front of a public school saying, people have died. Maybe they graduated a long time ago. They went to war. They died here. It's a war memorial now.
Yeah. No.
Then what?
I guess what I'm saying is...
Even
to me, I see a difference between
10 Commandments and this war memorial.
No, not
cross.
even that. To me, yes, the war memorial is on city property, but I think there's a difference between that and in front of a government building. To me, those feel a little bit different.
Okay.
Because one feels a little more blatant. Like you don't look at a tract of land and know instinctively if that's government owned or whatever. Like there is a chance that you could assume whatever. But to me, putting it in front of a school or in front of a government building is a very clear call to action of we are Christians in this building and we are for Christians and we support Christians. And if you don't fall under our umbrella, like go kick rocks.
I can't remember what the AHA's original lawsuit said on behalf of those citizens, but I think they were kind of making their case that when I drive past this every day, it is a reminder that my city cares about Christians more than they care about me.
Oh, yeah.
Not in the same direct way like a Ten Commandments monument would if you were going to the courthouse.
Right.
But in the same way, they were saying, I know where my government lies.
No, yeah, and I want to be clear that it's not that I'm saying that the cross on public property is okay, and this isn't. To me, should they dismiss this case, to me, that doesn't knock down the dominoes for everything else, because I think there are different arguments to be made.
If they made that clear. If they said, like, well,
and I say that really as if I know fucking anything.
Sure. And here was the last one, that last argument that I read that I was like, this is an intriguing one. One of the other cases braced for a loss. They said, they effectively said, we think you're going to rule against us, and you're going to say this cross is legal, but we want you to make it clear, if you do that just because you say this particular cross is legal does not give carte blanche for other governments to start erecting Christian war memorials. And part of that, they said, is this one went up like several decades ago, and they said the Bladensburg Cross is also the fruit of a former establishment. It was erected at a time when Christians were dominant, both numerically and politically, basically saying, like, yeah, you guys were the only game in town when this went up.
Sure.
But today, for government to erect such a cross today would be a very different thing, done in conscious disregard of religious minorities that are far more numerous and visible. So if you uphold this cross, it should be solely on the narrow ground that long-standing vestiges of former establishments can sometimes remain. Which is kind of an argument that sounds a lot like the justification to keep Confederate monuments up. Like, it's not right anymore, but it's been around forever, and it's been here, and now it's kind of established in the culture for better, for worse. So if you say this is legal, you should make it very clear we are only talking about a cross like this in these circumstances. And you're not saying that war memorials that happen to be in the shape of a Christian symbol are okay, so have at it, everybody.
Right.
Which I thought was an interesting way to go about it. Just saying, if you're going to rule against us, please make it a narrow decision and don't let this get out of hand. So those are the arguments that all these different groups were making. And the question is, will any of it seep through to any of those conservative justices? And again, realize that when they go into oral arguments, the judges all know these arguments now, in theory. They all know what these briefs said, and the oral argument is not going to be Monica Miller of the American Humanist Association reiterating all these points. She'll start doing that, but almost immediately they're going to interrupt her and start arguing about all of this stuff, saying, this is a dumb argument, here's why. Like, fight back on this.
Are you telling me X, Y, Z?
Yeah, and so that's going to be interesting to hear how they respond to this brief, and you won't know that until the oral argument. So she's totally capable and competent of doing this. This is her first case in front of the Supreme Court, but she's as good as anybody else doing this stuff, so I'm really curious to see how this goes. I'm not eager to hear what the decision's going to be probably in June. But again, it's not just a question of is this constitutional or unconstitutional. It's also a matter of how do they decide this case? Like, what do they say about it that will make a difference in terms of church-state separation issues moving forward?
Yeah.
All right, I'm done with that one. You want to move on to something more frivolous?
Sure.
Remember Kim Davis? You remember Kim Davis.
How could I ever forget?
Kim Davis,
that
the one
hair, those glasses.
who said she's not going to sign off on those marriage licenses in Kentucky, even though same-sex marriage is legal.
I just had a moment of complaint. Wasn't there a moment that she, like, came out of somewhere and like did a fist pump
Yes,
or like
after
held
she
somebody.
got out of jail for a couple of days for violating the law, she came out with her fist pumps in the air like, God helped me through this. I win.
I was trying to like pull her up in my brain, and I conflated her with Roger Stone, who just came out of prison doing the Nixon peace sign, and I was like, did she do that? That was a weird choice. Anyway, somebody photoshopped that for me.
The false memories are getting planted, right? So here's what's interesting. One of her biggest defenders in the past couple of years, in addition to her legal team, has been Kentucky's Christian governor, Matt Bevin. Like, our super Republican governor of Kentucky has been on her side.
Quick sidebar on Matt Bevin.
Matt Bevin.
Fuck that guy.
Sure.
He just said in an interview or tweeted, or I don't know, I found out about it somehow, that the fact that, and I want to be extremely clear what's going on in the Midwest. Did you hear about this?
I did.
I want to be very clear what's going on in the Midwest. It's not just like uncomfortably cold. We Midwesterners are a tough people. We're fine with cold. It is subarctic.
It's like below 20 below, 30 below.
It is frostbite within minutes of being exposed to this weather.
Yeah.
It is genuinely dangerous cold.
Matt Bevin.
Most of Chicago has been shut down for 2 days. Like, I haven't been in my office in a couple days. My husband hasn't been. You don't have a job, so what do you know?
That's very true.
But Matt Bevin was like, he said that the fact that Kentucky, and I don't know where the temperatures in Kentucky are right now.
It's still low.
It's still cold.
Yeah. The fact that they closed down schools.
He said it was evident of snowflake culture.
Yeah.
So
it's like they were all super weak.
Yeah.
Isn't that the word he used?
Yeah. So right now it's Thursday night. It's 23 degrees in Louisville. Those sweet Kentuckians are not equipped for this shit. This is my best friend's Kentucky. She does not cope well with the cold. They're not used to this. But anyway, like, how fucking dare you? This is genuine, real It's just like saying like, oh, like, everybody's triggered when I burn them with a cigarette, like fucking hashtag libtards. Like, what are you talking about, dude? Like, weather is not a liberal agenda. Right. What are you doing?
Yeah, you call them little
Matt Bevin.
weaklings.
I was so angry.
So let me tell you why else you should hate this
our
guy.
Fucking generation invented snow days. Like, what? Why are you trying? You're trying so hard to be mad at me.
Little Timmy isn't going to first grade, snowflake.
Jesus.
So while Matt Bevin's making fun of kids who don't go to school. So anyway, he's been Kim Davis's biggest defender. He actually said in 2015, I absolutely support her willingness to stand on her First Amendment rights. Without any question. I support her.
Bevs.
Yeah.
Not
so
how
anyway,
that works.
there was a lawsuit by one of the couples, or I think maybe two of the couples, that did not get their wedding license, marriage license. They sued. They won. This was a while back. They won the lawsuit. Davis appealed the decision, and at the time, the same judge was looking at that case because of the technicality they were mad about. She lost the appeal, too, in 2017, and that meant someone had to pay the ACLU and their clients their legal fees, which totaled $225,000. And then they appealed the case again, and they're about to decide like the appeal, but almost certainly she's gonna lose again because what she did was still wrong. Okay, but here's the thing:
illegal.
Here's the question. Who pays the $225,000?
Oh my God, is it Kim Davis herself?
Well, it was gonna be, according to the judge, it's the state of Kentucky because she was a government worker, and
Kentucky
these people
is
sued.
Flush with cash.
And
cool.
Yeah, well, and this is the problem. Like, I think people were pissed off that everyone suffers because she's this Christian bigot. But basically, she was working for the government.
Can they just take whatever profits the Ark Memorial or the Ark Museum brought in?
She was representing the government when she did this illegal thing, so the government's got to pay up. And what did Matt Bevin say this week? He's like, hell no, we're not paying for this.
Kim who?
Yeah. He's like, Kim Davis can pay her own damn bills.
New phone, who dis?
Yes, that's exactly it. And so Matt Bevin, who called her an inspiration, doesn't want to pay the bill. And so Kim Davis is now stuck with this bill, which is hilarious. Now,
does that make me like him less or more?
No, it makes you like him less because
he's
at the
doing
very
the wrong
least,
thing for
at the
sure.
very least, even though he was wrong before, you could argue, well, at least he had her back. And now he's like, no, screw you.
But also the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah, no, but he's not your friend.
Yeah, this is just me watching gleefully as all of my bad faith actors burn in hell.
A couple things about this. One is she could do a GoFundMe, and I'm sure she could raise the money really quickly. But two, she appealed this decision. They're about to get an appeals court ruling about this, which means hopefully she's going to lose again, which is only going to pile on the legal fees on top of that. At some point, somebody's going to have to pay up. And Kentucky's government is basically going to the judge and saying, we shouldn't be on the hook for this.
Money.
She was on her own back then, And here's the thing. I don't think they're going to win this argument because the government said they didn't force her to do it. They didn't fire her out of the position. And in fact, the judge who ruled in this one, Davis, I think he said something like this. The governor's lawyers said Davis acted alone without any state support, they said in their briefs. And the judge basically said, if the state had chosen to, it could have pursued criminal penalties against Davis for official misconduct for refusing to do her duty, or the legislature could have impeached her and removed her from office. Instead, this is the judge talking. Instead, the state legislature modified the marriage license form to appease Davis so no clerks would have to sign off on the license. So, at no point did the government say, you're doing this on your own and we want nothing to do with it. They said, we'll accommodate you because you're one of us.
Nor was it happening without their explicit knowledge. They obviously knew. Oh my God, that's so fucking incredible.
Funny to watch Matt Bevin, who, by the way, just like you said, accused everyone of being snowflakes.
Yeah.
He's like, what? You're accusing me of doing something? What? No, it was all that woman.
I never
blame
could.
Her. Leave it to a Christian man to blame a woman for a problem.
Leave it to a man. Let's not needlessly narrow down the field.
Let's talk about our state for a second.
Oh, God.
Let me tell you what an Illinois Republican did this week. Yeah. Darren Bailey is a state rep. I forgot which part of the state he's from, but he's a Republican, so he's probably not our neck of the woods. But he filed a bill, House Bill 341, which is one of these typical Project Blitz bills to put In God We Trust in a, quote, conspicuous location inside or outside each school building in the state. He wants In God We Trust in every school. This is his bill. And usually, when you say, we want this to be up there, what is the justification? Why do they say they want these In God We Trust plaques in every school? What do they say?
I actually have no idea.
They usually say it's patriotic. It's our national motto.
It's our national motto.
We want it up there. So when they asked Bailey, why do you want to do it? He made the Republican mistake of saying the quiet part out loud. And he said, well, as a God-fearing nation, as a God-fearing Christian, I believe that the lack of such is the problem in our country today.
Whoops.
The most common phrase I hear is that we need to put God back in our schools to bring back common decency and help give a moral compass to our young people. This bill does just that.
The most common phrase I hear from my own face?
Yeah.
That's not... What an asshole.
Yeah. And apparently there's no decency or morality in schools. And the way to fix that is to put 4 words up on a wall so kids can graffiti it or something. This bill, he said this bill does just that. This bill's not going to fix shit. If your school has morality and decency problems, don't pay for plaques or don't get plaques put up there on other people's dimes. That doesn't fix anything. But this is what happened. Here's the good news. I'll just get this out of the way. Thankfully, Illinois is one of the few states that is dominated by Democrats on every level. I highly doubt this is going to get anywhere. But the fact that this guy was dumb enough to say, well, I just want it because I want to promote Jesus and Christianity everywhere. Dude, you're not helping your side.
Has anybody have you seen Oliver the musical or movie?
I was in Oliver
the
musical.
I was too.
I was a gruel server. Thank you very much.
I was a dancing skeleton, so in your dumb face.
You win.
But in the first scene in the, I've never read the book because I am not a fan of Charles Dickens.
Yes.
Come at me.
Right.
I read an essay about it in college.
Why picture books are bigger than classic literature by Jessica.
Okay, listen. The man was paid by... I give him a lot of credit for bringing literature to the people, and I think what he did is really important during the Victorian era, and he used his platform responsibly in a way that I respect a lot. However, the motherfucker was paid by the word, and that is no way to write a story.
Go on.
Anyway... The beginning scene when he's in the orphanage, it's all these like kids crying about how they can't eat, don't have enough to eat, and singing about food. And there's a huge banner in the background. Do you know what it says?
What?
God is love. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'm shocked nobody's done like a side-by-side comparison of like, yeah, signs always super work.
Yeah, so I hope that doesn't pass. We'll see. There's another story that
coincidentally... yell at me
coincidentally...
about my opinions on Charles Dickens.
Bring it. At Jessica. There is a story. Someone's in for a lot of angry tweets. By the way, I do want to point this out because I forgot to do it at the beginning of the show. When Jessica says baby boomers should die in a genocide, she's joking, exaggerating a little bit. I don't think you need to
speak for me. I mean, if you're a baby boomer listening, it's you that I hate. You personally.
I'm amused.
Choke on it.
I am a little amused by how many people are like, I'm a baby boomer and I do not deserve to die. Dude,
also,
it's a joke.
When you write emails to friendlyatheist@gmail.com, like, I read them. You don't need to write to Hemet and tell him to, like, keep his woman quiet. I see them.
I delete the ones that say just that. Okay, like, this one...
What the fuck, you guys? You really think Hemet has that kind of hold over me? Have you heard this podcast? He can't shut me up for a moment.
Man, I try, but there's so much to delete.
Oh my God, you idiots.
I know. Oh, no. So, as I was saying, donate to Patreon, all of you idiots. That would be good. Okay, so...
It's just so dumb, y'all.
There's another local story, but actually had national implications. I think we talked about this guy before.
Sorry, I can't stop thinking about it.
I think we actually talked about this before. I can't remember. But there is a mega church pastor who runs a church called Harvest Bible Chapel, which has satellite branches all over the Chicagoland area. His name is James McDonald. So huge mega church.
Route 59 right now?
There is.
It's by my dog park, I think.
James McDonald is the pastor of this church that has extensions everywhere, and there's even one in Florida, and a lot of these other churches will show videos of him preaching. That's how they work, whatever. He's been under fire for like maybe a year, maybe more now, because there were a couple of bloggers who started who wrote a blog that's just talking about how they're shady about their finances. Like they're taking in
a church?
I know. They're taking in a lot of money. It's very cult-like. They were documenting, like, here's what we know about this church, and they're saying all this, and they're saying McDonald, the pastor, is directly responsible for a lot of the concerns. So how did he respond to all this? And by the way, he also found out that there was a religion reporter who was writing for the Christian magazine World, who was also doing a story on the finance situation. And this was an open secret. I mean, we knew she was working on this story. So how did James McDonald respond? He sued the two bloggers for defamation.
Really?
And the journalist who hadn't done anything yet, but she was working on the story. And he sued the bloggers' wives.
What?
For what reason? No one knows.
Really?
Nobody knows.
Were they part of the defamation suit?
No.
What?
They had nothing to do with the blog. They were just there. He just wanted to stick it to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like a good Christian does.
So he sued all these people. And then here's the hilarious kind of thing. And I could say this because I have nothing to do with this. The hilarious thing is, as this lawsuit is proceeding in the courts, the defamation, the bloggers and their lawyers are like, all right, well, we need discovery from the other side. We need documents that show your finances. And this is a public case. This isn't under seal. This isn't the Mueller investigation. If you share these documents, they're going to become public as part of the public record. And so what did McDonald do? Oh, shit. We're going to drop the lawsuit because we don't want any of these papers going public.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God. So, like, he's now announced, like, I'm going to take a sabbatical from my church. I'm going to move down to Florida for a little while.
That's where Jesus is right now. He's in Florida during the winter. He's a real snowbird.
This guy is shady as shit. So, the good news is the lawsuit's over. They dropped the lawsuit. Yay to the bloggers. Yay to Julie Royce, the journalist. All right, fine. Here's what was surprising this week. And I don't know if people know this guy. If you're outside of Chicago, I've heard of him because I'm in Chicago. There's a shock jock radio host.
Mancow. I fucking hate Mancow. Mancow's been on the radio since I was in junior high. He's
been around for a long time. I was on his show when all the eBay stuff happened like a decade ago. Oh. And all I remember is after the very brief interview, he's like, well, you're going to hell. Hangs up the phone. I'm like, what just happened?
Cool, dude. So you didn't get to go in the studio?
No, this was over the phone.
He's making a comeback. I see his face on billboards.
He's now hosting a new show on a separate thing. He's actually less of a shock jock than he is just a typical radio DJ.
He's in his late 70s. I think he has to give up the ghost at some point.
But the thing is, he's actually, and this is no secret, for the past several years, he's been very open about his Christian faith, as a shock jock does. And he's actually buddy with James McDonald, and there are lots of pictures of these two hanging out. He said James McDonald is the guy who baptized me in Israel on a trip several years ago. These guys hung out all the time. But this week, in a letter, in an article that was posted in the local Daily Herald, they actually posted a letter written by Mancow saying, I'm this guy's friend, and what this guy is doing is shady as shit.
Really?
Yeah, and he basically torched their friendship, but he basically said he's been deceived by McDonald's, and this cult-like atmosphere in the church still has a stranglehold on a lot of people who attend there. And I'll go through an example. This is what Mancow says. Pastor James and a fundraising campaign that he was doing called Closer, asked me to donate $3 million recently. And this seemed rather tone-deaf to me because I was unemployed at the time. Granted, he made a lot of money, but he was unemployed at the time. He said the number kept shrinking until I was asked if I could at least sell all of my memorabilia, whatever he had, and give that money to Harvest. And I'm quoting here, my weakness was sickening. I mean, I wish I had just said something more aggressive about how awful it was. Instead, I just sat there with a stupid smile on my face. But he joked back, and here's what he said to Pastor James. Why don't you sell your Harley? I joked with Pastor James, trying to lighten the mood. No, he responded, I like my motorcycle. But if you don't give, see who's more blessed, me or you.
Wow.
And I'm quoting more. Pastor James and others suggested I buy a house in Naples, Florida, where Harvest has a church and where he now is living in exile, and then leave it to the church when I die. And Mancow says, what about my family? I asked. Wouldn't I leave my house to my own daughters? No answer.
Oh my God.
So it was kind of like, this guy's kind of going through, he's like, I know these people. I know as a rich guy, they came to me for money. And the problem is all their financial things are basically saying, we don't have any money. You guys got to give us more money. But then Pastor James seems to be doing just fine.
He loves his Harley.
Right? Even though the church keeps saying to everybody, we're struggling, you need to give us more. That's what the financial shadiness is all about. And Mancow's just like, I'm sick of this. I was able to escape that. But like a lot of the people in the congregation, they're still suckers, basically.
Oh, man.
So it was a very interesting read. We will have a link to that on the site, but it was very interesting. And by the way, one of the ways he justified the whole cult sensibility, Mancow basically says, it was cult-like when Pastor James and elders at the church instructed us not to listen to outside noise, meaning no news or blogs
like the
criticizing
radio,
the pastor. Yeah, pretty much.
B96?
I think they started saying that when all the blog posts started coming out about the finances. They said, don't listen to the outside noise. It's satanic, you know? These people are coming to get you. So anyway, I was amused by that one.
Did you listen to morning radio growing up?
Yes, a little bit.
Did you listen to Oldies 104.3 like I did?
No.
John Records Landecker. That was my morning radio guy. Maybe he listens. Come say hi, John.
Hi.
Records is his middle name.
No.
Yeah, that's what he says.
Oh, my God.
Well, I mean, I also listened to it starting when I was in kindergarten,
right.
So I was slightly more impressionable then. Oh, my God, what if it really wasn't his middle name this whole time?
I was just amused by this one. Okay, we've talked about Karen Pence took a job at a Christian school, and it's anti-gay, so she got backlash for it. Fine, whatever. There is a guy, Christopher Stroop, who is great. He's an ex-evangelical who's trying to expose evangelicals and all the shadiness that comes along with it. because he's no longer one of them. And after the Karen Pence story went viral, he started a hashtag expose Christian schools. Like, tell me what your experience was like. And a lot of those responses were like disturbing and heartbreaking, as you would expect.
Right.
And that hashtag also took off for unrelated reasons when those boys from Covington Catholic did their thing in Washington, because it's another religious school. And so people are starting to share their stories of going to a religious school, and they're not all flattering, right?
Right.
So a New York Times reporter, Dan Levin, he wanted to write something about people's experiences growing up at Christian schools because people are talking about it now. So he did something that is actually pretty normal for a journalist to do. And think about this for a second, especially if you don't pay attention to journalism or anything. How do you get these stories from people? How do you get them to spill their guts to you about what they experienced? Because, like, what would you do if you were looking for those stories? A couple options are you ask your friends. You go on Facebook and you post something on your wall. But again, when you do those things, you're limiting yourself to the people who know you, right? And that's a very small circle. So what he did is he went on Twitter and he basically said, and I'm quoting here, "I'm a New York Times reporter writing about hashtag expose Christian schools. Are you in your 20s or younger who went to a Christian school? I'd like to hear about your experience and its impact on your life. Please DM me, privately message me," right? And that's it. And of course, the right wing went crazy.
What? About a journalist?
That request about a
love the New York
journalist doing
Times.
journalism because they don't know how it works. And they're like, just to be clear, what he did is not a weird request.
No, that's how that works.
That's how that works.
It's like at the end of every Maury episode, it's like, are you a student whose mother left you for their uncle?
Talk
that
to us.
didn't even make sense. Call us.
Right. Because we don't know you, but maybe you're watching this and you
Right.
know us and you have something you want to share.
Right.
So Maury this thing. So that's what he did. And so here's the thing. I don't know what stories he got or how many, but like the reaction from right-wing media outlets, like Breitbart said he wanted to expose Christian schools. Like he was trying to undercut them, which he did not say he was doing, nor was he trying to do.
I mean, okay.
He was using the hashtag to get information because people were on it.
Benefit of the doubt, like that is what he's trying to find dirt on, like shit that went down in Christian schools. And like,
and he was trying to hear, he didn't say, like, give me bad stories. He said, give me your experiences. And again, what would have been shady is he gets stories saying, I had a great experience, and then he ignores them completely. That would have been shady. But there was no indication he was doing that. So they were just like, he's just trying to look for dirt. And WND.com, WorldNet Daily, it used to be called, they included the subtitle to their article blasting him. Did you or your editor come up with this idea? Were you both sober? Like
that's not funny.
Yeah.
That's not funny or clever.
They're all basically mad about an article that hasn't been written yet about a guy who is searching for information. And again, by all means, when he comes out with the article and you don't you think it's unfair, go ahead and criticize it.
Sure.
That's fair. But like to do that to a guy who's asking for information is weird. So that article finally came out the other day.
Whoa.
Yeah. And I read it. And guess what? He includes good and bad stories.
What?
Can you
Fair and
believe
balanced.
it? I know. And by the way, some of those stories were like, seriously, some of them were depressing. They included bullying and, the sexual purity myths that a lot of those schools teach. But a lot of them said they taught me to love people who I disagree with. And I should respect other people and blah, blah, blah. Like, there were some good stories, too. They were included in the mix. There were only a handful of stories, like maybe under 10 that and he didn't even write an article. He just said, I wanted to share with you some of the stuff I've heard. Here's some of the bad stories. Here's some of the good ones. Here's some of the other types, whatever. There are only like 10 stories overall. I'm sure he got who knows how many more, but it was a fine article for what it was trying to do. But just the idea that conservatives got mad at a guy who was doing actual journalism without even knowing what he was doing.
They don't know what that looks like anymore.
I don't know like what better defines like right-wing media than that sort of thing.
Did you spill wine on your notes?
I may have.
How very Jessica of you.
I know. I have one more for you, which is there is this push, and Donald Trump fueled the fire on this, of course,
Is this about Bible literacy in schools?
He quoted, this is the Trump tweet, numerous states introducing Bible literacy classes, giving students the option of studying the Bible. Starting to make a turn back? Great, says the, again, adulterer of...
Doesn't he credit Fox and Friends in that or something like that? Or
that's
I might be
all
thinking
his
of another.
tweet said.
Oh.
But this was specifically in response to a Fox News segment that featured a guy named Aaron McWilliams, who's a North Dakota state representative, and his bill did not say it was optional for these districts to offer those classes. He would force public schools to have Bible classes. So, like, even if you had, like, 4 kids who wanted to take it, and like 30 kids who needed to take a math class, your district would have had to hire a Bible teacher, and that's money they could have used on a math teacher or some other class, and they couldn't do it because that was his bill. His bill failed, by the way, by a long shot.
Dumb.
In North Dakota, which is all Republican, he still failed. But just to be clear, like these Bible literacy classes, if you are teaching Bible as literature, because there's a lot of references and allusions to it, there's nothing illegal about that.
We've definitely covered this a
that.
lot.
A lot of these bills we've started to see from this Project Blitz push to get Bible classes in public schools. A lot of them, they don't all say the same thing. Some bills say we want you to teach a semester of the Old Testament, offer a semester of the New Testament. You're allowed to offer a semester of both. They don't say always that it must be taught objectively.
Right.
They don't say what qualifications the teachers need in order to teach it, which is scary. And again, the fear is not that you're teaching kids about the Bible, it's that you're indoctrinating them with the Bible.
Right.
That's the concern. All the church-state separation groups that oppose these bills, they have no problem, at least when I've seen, with schools that offer electives in Bible as literature classes that are taught well. There's nothing wrong with that.
I would argue that it's a really valuable class to have to, like, I think... somewhere along the way, I think I took like a world religion class of like
comparative religions would be more useful.
I think that's a useful thing to have to like understand and be a more productive person. But no, let's learn about Adam and Eve. That's definitely going to come up in your
right. And again,
class.
if you're learning about it as a cultural relevance, if you're studying Dante's Inferno, you want to know about biblical references he makes in it. There is some use to that. I get that. And to make sense of politics today, you kind of want to know what the Bible is saying, like, to make sense of the world around us and the wars people fight and things like that a comparative religions class could also do very well.
Yeah.
But again, no one's arguing about elective Bible classes if there's interest in it. If a district wants to offer it, it's done fine. The issue is that a lot of these bills... They force the districts to offer it regardless of interest. They don't have any provision that says they have to be taught objectively.
Right.
We know they're not always taught objectively.
Right.
And that's where the problems are. So
right. And I want to be like, when I was in college, I was assigned passages from the Bible as reading because I was a literature major and I was reading medieval literature and I needed that frame of reference and my dumb atheist ass didn't know anything. Yeah. So like there are, I think it's really important to be clear here that it's not saying like nobody should ever touch the Bible or nobody should ever touch the Bible in an academic context. The Bible really is important as a literary reference. And I know I've brought this up before, but Richard Dawkins in The God Delusion has like a whole page of just expressions that are common parlance that came from the Bible or whatever. I'm not saying it's necessary if you're not, again, studying like literature and need that frame of reference. I'm also not saying it's not a useful thing to have an understanding of. The point is like, in 5th grade, would I have been a good student of the Bible from my public school teacher? Almost certainly not. And I was a smart kid. I like wanted to learn, but fuck that. I would have hated that. And there's no way anybody would have been. It doesn't matter. It's fucking dumb. And
so
it just like
President Pussy Grabber gave it the thumbs up though.
What a waste
so there you
of time and effort and this posturing. It's so exhausting, and I cannot wait until we look back on this portion of history and just watch these like Christians, quote unquote, Christians, no quotes, doing all this posturing for meaningless referenda, the Bible thing, the In God We Trust thing, while literal human beings are starving in our country. Like, the lens of history is going to be fucking cruel on these people.
I agree. I hope it is. I think we're a long way from that, but so yeah, that is something Trump decided to support. And then, by the way, again, the bill failed after he said all that.
Christ.
So
it's all dumb. I hate it all.
I'm done.
Everything good going on this weekend?
I got my big competition this weekend for public speaking with my kids.
Out.
We'll see how that goes.
Do you have your other laptop with you?
No.
Shit.
You're welcome.
My friend Ann is coming over tomorrow. We were going to record, but I just realized I don't have the other laptop.
Thanks for telling me.
I told you last week on the show. Probably.
We'll rewind the tape.
Yeah, right. Somebody can send me timestamps. You can follow me on Twitter at Blueberry, BLUEBURE, Hemmons at Hemmant Meta.
We'll post bonus episodes on the main feed coming up because I forgot to do that yesterday because Polar Vortex, sorry.
Ugh, fucking rude.
I had kids who were jumping on top of me.
Yeah,
no, wrong
the one this
reaction.
week is gonna be Garth Reynolds, which I'm like fucking stoked as hell to share with you guys. It was a real pleasure. My Etsy shop is Bitches Get Stitched Done. If you want like a thing to be made, we should talk about doing a meetup this in Chicago
later after speech.
When does speech end?
3 weeks.
Okay. Well, I didn't mean tomorrow. Okay. Cool, guys. Thank you for listening. Email us at friendlyatheistpodcast@gmail.com if you have questions, concerns, want to tell Hemmant to shut me up. It's not going to work. Better people than you have tried. Patreon.com/friendlyatheist podcast. You'll get a bunch of bonus episodes, including the one that I'll hopefully be able to record with Ann tomorrow. I'll have to come get a laptop from you or something. And
we'll see you next week.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.